So I graduated in March 2000, and I think the bust kind of started around October of 2000. That's dot-com bust. It was so fast. San Francisco, there's a street called Market Street. It was all the startups. All the companies went out of business. The offices were boarded up, and this happened really fast in like a month or 2 months. So the company that I was working at shut down. In my life, I think those like 2 or 3 weeks were like the most stressed weeks. Because I see a lot of entrepreneurs like, yeah, I just want to raise money, raise some capital. It's great. Maybe 1 out of 1,000 is successful. Right? To me personally, I feel like the long sort of grind and the long-term vision and building the company slowly, bit by bit, it's a lot more satisfying. So I came to India. One of the schools in this location that we're in, Virar, had asked me to do a seminar of what's going on in the US, right? So I did that, and then a couple of people after that asked me, hey, you talked about this business, can I join you? And the first thing I asked them was like, how much you want to get paid? And the number that they gave me is like, oh yeah, I can afford that, so you're hired. The Virar story was, I could not afford Mumbai. My dad had this factory here. It was shut down, old buildings. Like, it's not next to the station. If I can get internet somehow, the electricity, maybe through a generator, we can figure it out. We'll be in business. And the 2 folks that started with me are from Virar. Because that's the seminar that I give. So I was like, all right, let's give that a try.
My name is Manish, and today I'm your host. Today we are going to welcome a remarkable person. He has been a mentor for many individuals in this area. He has been an investor. He has been a guide. He has also been an entrepreneur. He is making waves in the world, being the CTO and co-founder of Contentstack. His story was rather remarkable, and we thought that the story need to be told. And this podcast is about the stories that need to be told. So I want to welcome my host and my guest, Mr. Nishant Patel. I have been working with Nishant for a while, and I figured that he has a certain knack to predict the future rather accurately. And today we are going to explore a few more dimensions that even I am not aware of, and we want to reveal it to the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Nishant Patel. Nishant, very welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
So it's a pleasure to be here, Nishant, with you. It is going to be a conversation, a few questions that we have discussed, some of the problems that you have had a perspective on, and we'll just keep it very, very conversational.
Sure.
So, and if you think there are bits that the world should know about you, please feel free to chime in.
Sounds good.
All right. So, rather interesting journey so far, Nishant. I know you have been around for a while, since at least the dawn of the internet, since at least the dot-com boom.
You can tell about my gray hair.
So, you have seen it all,
yep.
Right? You have seen at least 3 boom-bust cycles. So tell me more about your entrepreneurial journey. Tell me more about your journey as a techie first.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so I was born in India, but I moved, or I had the opportunity to move to America at the age of like 14. So I moved there in 92. My parents just dropped me off at my cousins that I had never met. It was an amazing experience, I would say. This was, 92 was, the internet had just started. I think people started getting email addresses, and websites were a thing, but it wasn't like everyone was using it. The speeds were extremely slow, right? So I was curious, in tech. I just kind of, it pulled me, I guess. So I ended up, in high school, whatever tools I would get hands on, I would, there was like a calculator that I programmed in the calculator, using the calculator, right? And then my cousin bought a computer, a desktop computer. So I kind of, started hacking and learning through that. Ended up going to Ohio State and did computer science, right? So went to Went to college for about 4 or 5 years, and then in 2000, I graduated in 2000, moved from Columbus, Ohio to San Francisco. And that was, again, just being at the right place at the right time. I think the dot-com boom had, accelerated. I think the late 90s, the internet was just everywhere, and new businesses were coming up, right? So I graduated, I would say, the timing was amazing, and I ended up in San Francisco, the epicenter of everything, right? Yeah. So that's how I kind of started my tech journey. It was interesting because I got a job because I had to get a job, make some money. And I started at a startup. I switched jobs in like 4 or 5 months to a bigger company. It was like 200 employees or something like that, just because they gave me a little bit more money. And .com days were crazy because there was a lot of opportunities, and people, you couldn't find enough people, so you could basically get raises like just by walking to the next building, right? And I did that. Money is important when you start your career, right? So I made that choice, but I got caught in sort of the first downturn. So I graduated in March 2000, and the first I think the bust kind of started around October of 2000. That's the .com bust, right? And it was so fast that most of the companies, like San Francisco, there's a street called Market Street, and then south of Market was all the startups. It literally just like all the companies went out of business. All the offices were boarded up, and this happened really fast in like a month or 2 months. So the company that I was working at shut down, basically, and that was pretty stressful. I would say it's one of probably in my life, I think those like 2 or 3 weeks were like the most stressed weeks, because I had a rent to pay. I had to take care of my sister and all these responsibilities. And then when I got an apartment, it was very expensive. So I had to pay that, had student loans, all sorts of stuff, right, that people usually deal with. I was fortunate enough to get another job in an integration company called Tibco. So they would integrate, these ERP softwares and, just massive softwares that corporations would have. They provided integration software to integrate all these different systems, right? I started there, and in a month they started laying off people. And so it was, for me, it's like, hey, I have to hold on to this job, right? And they were doing some really, really interesting things, so there was a lot to learn. So I just went in, like, I was like, hey, I'm not getting laid off, right? So they started laying off, like every 3 months they laid off for like 2 years, because it was just, the timing was bad. September 2001, I think there was a terrorist attack that also, again, didn't do good for the economy. So for the next 2 to 3 years, that company that I joined started laying off people, right? So for me, I just like dove straight in, and I was like, I'm going to do whatever I can to not be part of those layoffs, right? And also the tech and everything was very interesting. So I just went all in. So learned a lot, and I was there for 6 years. And then I decided, cloud had started in 2006. I first tried it out, AWS. It was a new service by Amazon. I tried it out, and I was like, man, this is crazy. Yeah, this is like, because, you make an API call and you start a server, right? So I just had that gut feeling like that this is something big here, right? And then, I was just curious. So I tried a few software, like I would try new things that would come out. So there was Salesforce, which was like a cloud software, right? Multi-tenant, it just scales automatically, that sort of stuff. But then there were other things. I remember 37 Signals. I had a software called Basecamp. There was another software company called Wufu. That's like a form builder. It's all SaaS based, right? These are early companies before the cloud, right? So I was like, hey, with the cloud, you're going to have more and more software that's delivered this way versus, software that was delivered that you had to install, right? And so it's like, well, I know a lot about integration. Can I, if the cloud's going to take off, there's going to be this SaaS-based applications all over the place, and that's going to create an integration challenge. So how about we create an integration software that connects these cloud systems all in the cloud, right? So even the integration software would be in the cloud. So that was kind of the general idea. And so I quit in 2007. And my uncle had passed away just like a week after I quit in India. So I came to India, no plans of basically starting anything here. But one of the schools in this location that we're in, Virar, or college, I would say, that asked me to do a seminar of what's going on in the US, right? So I did that. And then a couple of people after that asked me, hey, you talked about this business, can I join you? And the first thing I asked them was like, how much you want to get paid, And the number that they gave me is like, oh yeah, I can afford that. So you're hired,
Sure.
So I hired those guys and they're still with us today.
That was a pivotal moment.
Absolutely. I didn't know how to set up a business, run a business, none of that stuff, right? No idea of how I was even going to go about doing this.
There's a famous picture. You started in the college computer lab.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the college is like, yeah, we'll just like give you some space. And these two individuals that said, I want to join you, said, we'll just use this college space, right? So that's where we started. And I guess this office today, we're still in that office now, right? But it's a lot bigger than where we started. So yeah, I think, that's what got me into starting a business. And then building a product, getting the product market fit, getting customers, getting funding. I had no clue. Absolutely no clue. The only thing I knew was I was a techie. I could sense what, being a techie, I basically would play around with new tech. Okay. And then I would sense where the demand would go. And then I just knew how to build things as well, right? That was kind of what I knew how to do. So I started building. We started building with these two individuals, right? And it's like, okay, where do I get the money? And some of the guys that I worked with called me up and said, hey, Nishant, now that you're not working with us, can you do some projects for us?
Wow. Okay.
Right? And I'm like, sure. Will you pay me? It's like, yeah, okay. And then we started, doing some odd jobs here and there. So that kind of ended up becoming a services company. And then helping people move to the cloud. This is 2008, 2009, right? So it's very early. No one knew what the cloud was at that time. But there were enough folks out there that I knew that wanted to move certain workloads to the cloud, right? And I was already deep into the cloud by then. And so I helped them move certain, things to the cloud. Amazon recognized that. We were one of the first advanced partners of Amazon. Probably, I'm willing to bet we were one of the first ones in India to start cloud services, at that time, because this is like 2008.
Yeah.
And we just grew. I mean, we grew from there because the cloud kept on, people started seeing the benefit of it. We started helping a lot of these tech companies move to the cloud. And so our services business grew. While we were doing that, there was a bunch of software that were still kind of built and managed the old way. And they would just take that and put it in the cloud and call it, hey, we're in the cloud.
Yeah.
But what the cloud did was it changed the delivery mechanism of software, right? So it wasn't about installation of software for every customer.
Yeah.
It was a service that was already there and it would scale automatically.
Correct.
New features just come in, everyone just gets that feature. There's no installation, there's no upgrades. That's the delivery model changed, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of software companies just didn't, either maybe the recognizers just weren't willing to put that effort to rewrite their software that they've been selling.
Yeah.
Right?
That needed a whole another effort.
Absolutely. And so that was an opportunity, right? Because as we were moving these old software to the cloud, just installing it in the cloud. It's like, hey, we got to rewrite this thing, right? So we ended up building a few cloud products, even things like log management. How do you collect log? So we wrote some software to basically collect log in the cloud. This is again 2009 early days, and there was another bit that we did where you could do single sign-on to a bunch of these cloud services in the cloud, right? And then content management. As we were moving old content management to the cloud, we're like, well, there's also mobile that has showed up, and instead of it, content just getting pushed to the web, it has to get pushed to the mobile app as well.
Yeah.
So it's like two channels, and then content management systems were still kind of old, So it's like, okay, can we rewrite that, but also take care of like the two channels, and maybe there'll be more channels later on to deliver that content. So we wrote it from scratch, right? So we started a content management, API first content management service.
And who would have thought something of that sort? Only.
I mean, this is like 2011, 2012, right? Yeah. And today, I guess fast forward to today, Contentstack is, driving like just billions of API calls a day, and content for some of these large websites across the world, right? Yeah. And this particular technology got, they started calling it headless CMS, right? So we were one of the pioneers of that technology. Also on the integration side, so the product that I wanted to build back in 2007, I could not build it then, but in 2013 we started building it
on the cloud.
On the cloud, integration on the cloud, and this product was called Built.io Flow. Right, so we ended up building that tech as well, and yeah. So, anyways, it's a long answer to your question, but it's been a heck of a journey along the. Yeah.
As Steve Jobs had often mentioned that, keep going, your dots will connect somehow. Of course, they do connect in retrospect, but they do connect, right? So, starting in an integration company, then at the being at the right place at the right time, advent of cloud, and then thinking futuristically that this is where the future is heading. And today, Contentstack is probably defining the future at this point.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Like someone had mentioned this, was like there's not a lot of new problems that you come across. Okay, the problems are already there. There's solutions for those problems as well. The solution might not be an efficient solution, correct? Right? So if you're curious and you're constantly adopting new technology, right? So in this case, now we're like in this AI world, and you look at it, you're curious, you're just learning the capabilities of all these AI tools. Yeah. You could go back to those problems that already exist and the solutions that already exist, and then take this knowledge of AI and then apply to those solutions and say, hey, can I squeeze more value out of this, right? And if the answer is yes, most likely with AI being so disruptive, you could probably look at all the problems and all the solutions and say, how do I apply AI to this? And most likely you'll get a lot more value out of it. And all those are opportunities for new businesses, right? So that's, this is all retrospect, but like when I look at it, it's just like, okay, well, I was a geek. So I constantly was, reading and digesting all the new tech. And then I'm just constantly looking at problems and solutions. And I was like, oh, can I apply this new tech to the solution that's already out there and make it much better, right?
Yeah. So the picture that I see right now, seems like it was a cruise. It was an easy journey. From one point to the other, you were able to, some things kept coming and you were able to solve and you were able to find support. You were able to find the market. But I don't think that was the case. There must have been a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah, and I think sort of the backstory, right? You could look at it and say, okay, well, you guys, you built the product and you had this vision, and there was a little bit of that. It's like some gut feeling, like, okay, we should do it a better way. But there was also, kind of being at the right place at the right time as well, right? So it's all the above. And when I started, like I said, I didn't really know how to run businesses. I didn't even know what venture capital is. I didn't know how to go raise capital and, do all, like,
Put together a pitch deck.
no, nothing. Like, I was an introvert. So, I mean, forget it. I wouldn't talk to anyone.
Yeah.
So all those things kind of built up over time. Certain products, I mean, I told you about a few products, right? Most of those we couldn't take it to market.
Yeah.
Was the market ready for it? Yeah, sure. There were other companies that have made amazing. On the log management side, there's Datadog. On the single sign-on side, there's Okta.
Yeah.
We basically built that software around the same time they started, but I had no idea how to take it to market. So at some point we built it and we shelved the tech.
Yeah.
Right. I just didn't know how to market it.
But all of that tech eventually led to creation of that knowledge.
Yeah.
And eventually we are leveraging it at Contentstack at this point.
Absolutely. Like we built so much stuff, like a drag and drop, UI. Now it's like everyone does it. Yeah. This is in 2010. You're building drag and drop kind of UI, collecting all the log, and then you're seeing that in real time. So there was a lot of tech that we had to build. That even though we shelved it, when I started the integration product, we used all that with all that during the build of the integration product, right? So it's not, I wouldn't say it's like a failure per se, right? We just couldn't take it to market.
Those were intellectual wins. I have heard that say that there are no failures, they are wins. So this is a good segue into some of the conversations we have had thus far. Maybe let me just rephrase this. We have seen this entire journey of yours, Nishant. But there must have been points where you felt that, is it all worth it? I should have been just working and earning a salary. Or there must have been days when you felt like, I can't do it. You must not have felt to wake up that morning. There must have been several such mornings, right? So walk us through some of those experiences, because everybody is able to see the tip of the iceberg, the success, the great personality that Nishant Patel today is. But there must have been points when you would have been really troubled by a lot of self-doubt, things that you must have not seen any light for a while. So of course, I'm just using all of these metaphors, but I just want to know some of those difficult experiences, and I think the audience will also benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because in the news, you hear and you see a lot of the success stories, right? And as an entrepreneur in the early days, especially in Silicon Valley, right, you see a lot of successes. So I would, just like anyone else, you would consume that. And while you were on this journey, you were like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not getting those successes, right? So that was always like, hey, what am I not doing right? I'm creating all these new products and trying to sell them. And so I would have a lot of self-doubt, like all the time, right? Some things I remember, like coming to India was not easy for me. Even though, I was born in India, but I moved at a very young age to America, right? And somehow I came back. And starting a business here is a whole nother ballgame, right? The fact it took me like 2 or 3 months to set up a company, how to get the funds coming from US to India at that time was challenging. Me being an introvert, I would not ask for advice or go out and reach out and do my research and all that. None of that stuff. I never did any of it. So it was a lot of trial and error. And then coming to India in this location that we're in, we sort of started in Virar at that college, but quickly realized we might have to move to the main city, right? So we moved to like Borivali in Mumbai, where you don't have to worry about like electricity and things like that.
Internet connectivity.
And connectivity, yeah. At that time, internet was just kind of taking off, I guess, in India. So it was a little behind. And connectivity was an issue in Virar. So we started in Borivali, but then as we were growing, like maybe in 2 years, I guess, I started the business 2008, 2009. we're like, hey, we can't afford the rent in Borivali. So we started looking at Virar again, right? So that was challenging. It was frustrating. I would pay certain contractors some money and they would not show up. And I'm like, what is this? Like, what kind, because you don't, in the US, at least the trust is there. Like you give your trust, you pay someone money, most likely, you are going to get that service. I think in India, it was completely opposite. So I had to learn all those. And I had days where I've been like, what am I doing this? I can just go back and get a job and and my wife was very supportive. She held on to her job so the money would come in. And so, yeah, I think that was one thing. There was a case where I was working with one of the clients and it was one of the main clients funding all of our, efforts and businesses and the product and all that, that we were doing. It was all coming through the services revenue from one customer. And that customer gave us some crazy timeline. And we made a tech choice for that project. And like literally 2 weeks before delivery, we realized that tech was not going to work. It was trying to build a mobile app using some new tech. And we had to completely pivot in like 2 weeks. And so I literally just took a flight overnight flight, just like, hey, let me get on a flight and go to India and be with the team and figure out how we're going to pivot really quickly in, 2 weeks and deliver this thing. Because that customer had a conference that they, promised to deliver this thing, right? So it was a high pressure environment. I came to India. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm just have to shut down this business. Like it's over. So that's one thing I remember. There have been tons of those, right? There are days where you get like punched in the stomach, and then you also get a high in the same day sometimes, right? So that's part of it. Like it's so many of those.
I remember once you had mentioned that, I've seen it all. I've seen some money coming in. We celebrating, celebrating some of those simple successes. But you've also seen very difficult times. You have mentioned once that you were minus $40,000. That number is somehow stuck in my head. So I want to know, how did it feel? Of course, there must have been some visibility that, okay, money is going to come in. But that moment where you have a lot of us, right? A lot of individuals want to lead a normal life. They would never want to be in a situation where they are in such deep debt and there is no visibility when the next paycheck is going to come. So I want to know specifically about that experience. What was going on in your head then?
Yeah, I think the negative 40,000 is like that's where I kind of started my career. So right out of college, like student debt and everything else that I owed to a credit card. I think I put a lot of money. During the college, I was like, hey, I'll make up the money somewhere, sometime, and I would just spend, completely reckless, right? So, I had a bunch of debt on credit card as well as the student loan. Of course, my dad paid for a little bit of the student loan as well, so that helped. But getting that first job in San Francisco, and then getting an apartment. My sister then migrated to the US. She was 16 at that time, and I was like 21. So all of a sudden, coming out of college, you get all that pressure of taking care of my sister. I have all this some of the debt I had to cover, and San Francisco is not cheap, and that was sort of the height of a boom. So I felt like I got a really good job with good money that I wasn't expecting in Ohio. And in San Francisco, I was getting paid. And the first time I get the paycheck, I was like, what the hell is this? The taxes and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, I'll barely make my rent and then also pay for, whatever food and stuff. So there's no way like I will pay off my loans, right? Or debt. And then, of course, I told you where once that company shut down 6 months into my, career, was like one of the worst moments because it all came to me. It's like, man, I'm just like negative and I have to take care of all this stuff, right? So it was the bottom of the bottom, I would say.
But did you see something happening while in your entrepreneurial journey? Were you able to meet payrolls all the time? Did you have the money? I'm sure there have been moments where it was like, how do I meet my payroll? Did you undergo such a situation ever?
A lot, right? And I've never been off on payroll. I ran a bootstrap company for good 12 years. And we grew to like 300 plus people. I've never been off on the payroll cycle, right? But cash flow management was definitely issues sometimes. We managed it. We managed it pretty well, I would say. But as an entrepreneur, right, like this is I think one of the biggest difference. Like when you have a job, you're going to get that paycheck.
Yeah.
But as an entrepreneur, you have responsibilities of making sure that paycheck shows up for your employees, right?
Yeah.
And it's a different type of stress that you have to go through, and there's no shortcut around that. Yeah. So you have to go through it, and you have to manage that cash flow, make sure everyone gets paid on time, and yeah.
So, I think there's a piece that is missing. You spoke about starting a company in Borivali, or taking your entire bandwagon to Borivali and coming back to Virar. Okay, I think there's a very interesting piece that the world would want to know. That Virar is like underbelly of Mumbai.
Mm-hmm.
If Mumbai is like the tier one, I think $15,000 per capita, Virar is probably like $800 per capita. So what? I know there were compulsive reasons for you to continue your journey from Virar. But today we are here, and I think probably we are like the great underdog story from Virar. So I want to know more about some of those early days. I remember there was no ready office space here, so you retrofitted that old tile factory where tiles were manufactured, where blue collar people will hang out, and then suddenly you're trying to build the future. These software engineers are coming in. How did you get yourself okay, let me phrase this again. How did you see the future out of that tile factory?
Yeah, I think it was all based on sort of needs, right? Like I said, I didn't know how to go raise capital, create a pitch deck, all those things. I just took it a day at a time. So as these folks that I knew started giving me business, I just kept on growing that, right? Kept on doing more projects, and it also kept me kind of into the tech scene, right? Like I was kind of just always up. I always wanted to use the latest and the greatest, and kind of be on the edge, right? So so those projects kept me going. I think the Virar story was, I could not afford Mumbai. Mm-hmm. So my dad had this factory here. It was shut down. Old buildings, like there's two small buildings that were there. And it's not necessarily like it's not next to the station. It's like about a couple of kilometers away from the station. So I said, well, if I can get internet somehow, and if the electricity, maybe through a generator, we can figure it out. So we'll be in business, right? And the two folks that started with me are from Virar, right? Because that's the seminar that I give. So I was like, all right, let's give that a try. Yeah. What I realized is with the Mumbai train, it's reverse traffic as well. So if someone is in Borivali, coming to Virar, it's reverse. Like they can just like sit and chill and come to Virar. Unless you're going the other way around, it's like you get beat up on the way from Virar to Borivali in the morning, right? Yeah. So that became sort of a benefit. So yeah, as we started getting money from these projects, we slowly renovated those buildings. It wasn't like one big shot that we renovated the buildings. It's like we'll take a room and then the next room and then the grounds, and over time we built it, and it became like this beautiful little oasis in the middle of Virar, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's how I kind of went about ending up in Virar. And what I realized is like, there's no one here. There's no other software company here.
Yeah.
Right.
Even today.
And, and there's challenges, right? Like when you're trying something new, there were, we would have employees come in and we would train them, and teach them all these technologies. But I would have to deal with like parents saying, "Hey, what kind of company is it?" And I would get on a call with these parents, and I was like, "Hey, this is real stuff, we're doing." I mean, this is in 2007. Like I said, no one in India was doing cloud, right?
Yeah.
But I had to explain that to some like local parents here. Like it was like crazy. And then
the journey of an entrepreneur where you are having to talk to parents.
It was, this is all new to me too, right? Because then it was the pressure on the parent side is like, well, hey, if my, son or daughter would go to work for TCS and, it would be good for their, like, getting married or something like that, right? Yeah. And I'm like, how do I like compete with that, right?
Yeah.
But whoever like wanted to work with, like said, okay, you know what? I get your pitch. I don't need to go to Borivali. And you're going to teach me all this new tech. I want to join you. I would take those guys in, right? So that's how I grew. And I feel like because I didn't know how to run a business, if I had stayed in Borivali, I would have been out of business. The fact that I came to Virar and these individuals wanted to work with me, kind of gave me this like slow growth in the business, as I also kind of started learning a lot about how to run businesses and how to make products and product market fit and all these things that we talk about today.
Right. Sure. So we have spoken about your journey thus far. So I want to get into your personal side. So I'm going to break the monotony of this conversation. I'm going to ask you a few rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Right? Ready? So I know, you're a techie. You, of course, would like to play around with all sorts of software that comes up. But what's your favorite gadget like?
I would say this, like, now that I'm in my 40s, this like device, this like a diabetic device.
Okay.
That you just like put it on yourself.
Glucose monitor?
It's a glucose monitor which real time connects to your phone. So anything you eat, it literally gives you that instant feedback.
Sugar spike.
I think that's like amazing.
Oh, nice. Okay. So what's the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Best piece of advice. It's a little longer sort of answer to this.
Sure.
As I was growing in Virar and doing well, the other companies that sort of came up in this region, I was in Mumbai, like SaaS companies, they realized there's a company called Raw Engineering in Virar with some amazing talent. So they started poaching people and giving them 2 or 3 times the salary.
Oh, that happened?
That absolutely happened.
Oh, right. Okay.
Okay. And I was not funded. These guys were funded. And so it's like it hit me all of a sudden, and like a few folks in the company one day just said, "Hey, we are resigning." And I'm like, holy shit, like, what do I do?
That happened on the same day?
Yeah, like literally, like,
okay.
So I was just like stressed at that time because, it takes a lot to train folks from the college. And then, so I spent like 2-3 years personally, like coding with them alongside them. And, if someone's giving you double or triple the salary, who wouldn't go, right? And so then I was talking to this individual here, highly successful person. And it's a very simple thing. He's just like, well, let them go. And just open the gates on the other side, like pull in more people. And I was like, well, that's easy to say. Right? And I thought about it a little bit. It's like, absolutely. Like, I just increased my hiring. And if these individuals want to go, and I create a really good training sort of program
that scales,
and just keep that going, and then I thought about like college football in in the States where they have to do that. These young kids come in, they train them, they play 4 years, and then they go out. And it's just sort of this machine. So I would say that.
Let them go.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, just let it go,
I would have expected you to say something like, be foolish and stay curious. But this was a very interesting perspective. Let them go. I don't know anybody would say something so candidly. So in the spirit of that, what do you think has been your leadership style? It is okay if you have multiple things to say, even if it is one word, and if it is okay if you have had a different kind of leadership style, if you have had a evolving leadership style over the years. So
yeah, I think I'm definitely very empathetic, and maybe I would say like the early years I would lean way too much into that, to where I would not give direct feedback, right? And what I realized throughout my career, like that is absolutely important, right? So I've kind of evolved. Now I still am empathetic, but I do give direct feedback, on areas that I see that individuals can improve on. And I think that's helped quite a bit, because that individual, if they take that feedback, then they can kind of internalize it and work on that, and then you continue to grow, right? So if I had to tell this to myself 10 years ago, I'd be like, hey, make sure you have that direct feedback. You don't have to be like crazy about it. You just kind of have that direct conversation, right? It helps that other individual. The other side also has to take that feedback in, right? That's important. But if they do that, I've seen individuals like grow tremendously, right? So I feel like now I'm very knowing what I know. I give that direct feedback, and also give ways of like trying to break those limits that individuals kind of get into, right? So I'll give them some tools of how to get out of that, because I also personally had to kind of go through and break those sort of rules and barriers and things like that.
And do you think that might have been one of the reasons why we have such longevity? I mean, we have people who have been around since at least 2007, 2008.
I think so. I think it's more like a family, right? Like when you start a business, you're in the trenches. You're working long hours, and you get to know each other. So it becomes sort of a family thing, right? So that's good. At the early stages, that's good.
But don't you think that also prevents you from doing the opposite of empathetic on occasions?
Absolutely. I mean, that direct feedback. This person might feel bad, and I don't want to give them that feedback, and all those things that the early days. I think I would tweak that a little bit. Kind of still be that very close knit, kind of group in the early days, but I would like make that other individual realize that, hey, I'm going to give you this direct feedback, and it's better for you and me, to grow together. So yeah, I think why they're here, I think it's maybe the culture. They see who I am. I also enjoy their company, and they've been growing alongside me, right? So it's like a mutual respect. And not everyone stays here for that long. Folks that realize, okay, this is a long-term kind of growth thing.
Absolute long-term grind.
Long-term grind. They do well.
Okay, I thought I'll just do a few rapid-fire things, but I'm liking the way you are answering your question. So I think this style also, your leadership style, has also evolved, right? So starting as a services company, then building a few products, then decoupling all of those companies, Contentstack, Series A, Series B, Series C, a multi-revenue target, multi-million revenue target. So you've seen it all, right? And you would see that at each milestone, there are challenges, and there are a lot of unforeseen challenges as well. So how have you navigated your way around it? I think this will be a very important piece of advice to, several people who are watching us, that, it's not about finding that money, seed money or Series A. You have to be relentless.
Yeah.
There are, of course, milestones, but then some of the fundamental bits never change. So I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think, you keep going, right? I mean, that's kind of take a step, one thing at a time, right? And, you want to build something that lasts for a long time. Because I see a lot of entrepreneurs like, I just want to raise money, raise some capital, make some quick money, and then flip and pivot and, all those things. I think it's great. Maybe, 1 out of 1,000 is successful.
Correct.
Right? But I think to me personally, I feel like the long sort of grind and the long-term vision and the long-term of like building the company slowly bit by bit, I think that's, it's a lot more satisfying, right? And I think you increase the chances of success too, because if you keep at it, and you have to believe in what you're doing, keep at it, I think you'll get to, some sort of an exit, or maybe create a sustainable company that goes on forever.
That outlasts the founders.
Yeah, I mean, it's and that journey is the learning, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
What I would say is, always like kind of as you go along that journey, you're learning a lot of lessons, right? So look back with everything that you went through and just evaluate, knowing what you know that moment, right? Like for me now, I always try to evaluate, from that day that I took my first job in San Francisco, all those things. And every time I kind of reevaluate every year, kind of think about it, I get new lessons from that.
Yeah.
Like what I should have done a little differently, right? I would say like try to minimize errors, right? You are definitely going to have errors in your journey. So how do you minimize it? Well, you go out and talk to people and get some advice, but make your own decisions, right?
Yeah.
Someone else's path to success is not going to be your path to success.
Yeah.
But you can take some lessons from it. And if you can minimize those errors and get to that end goal faster, I think, that's going to be beneficial to you.
Nishant, before meeting you, I always thought that, there are this and that kind of traits one must have in an entrepreneur to be able to really even dare to, start thinking about building a company. But when I met you, I figured that, when you started, you probably, and in fact, during this conversation, you have mentioned that there are so many things you didn't know. And I'm pretty sure that even to this day, you're figuring it out.
Yep.
I think when we get to, different revenue milestones, when we become like a truly global company as well, there will be things that we will encounter which we have not encountered before, and we'll have to figure it out, right? So, what's your take? There's no playbook as such, right?
Yeah, it's always like, it's one of those things, like, it's like the media that we consume, it just feels like everyone is like overnight successes, right?
Yeah.
There might be those cases, 1 or 2, but majority of them are not overnight successes. You could say, okay, I'm this genius coming out of college and I know everything. There's no way.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know how to run a business out of school, right? You don't know how to run a public company out of school. Like, you got to learn that along the way.
Exactly.
So it's a journey. It's a long journey that people have to go through. I would actually say there's so many companies that don't make it, right? And then the companies that make it too, there's like a long grind.
Yeah.
Right? There's 10, 15, 20 years to go, like from zero to public. And so many of those companies never make it, right? So there's like, it's a long, long grind to get there.
Yeah.
But the media will make you feel like, oh, it's overnight success.
Yeah.
These 5 companies that they always talk about, it's an overnight success, right? So, but the learning actually comes from when you talk to some of these individuals that have gone from like 0 to like $1 billion in revenue, over like a period of 10, 15, 20 years. They have incredible amount of like knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Because they've been through all those ups and downs.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people kind of candidly talk about their journey and, like the early initial days, they weren't these geniuses, you kind of slowly build up.
Absolutely.
Over time.
So I remember, going through a post that Neha mentioned once. that she has a personal board of directors. Do you also have a group of individuals who you sort of reach out to whenever you need to? Or I mean, is there a cadence where you guys sort of get together every once in a while and have a freewheeling conversation?
So Neha, my wife, she is more outward. She's an extrovert. She creates a network, and she has that personal board of advisors, right? Yeah. For me, it's maybe one or two people that I go to, and then they're not necessarily in my field, because I'm an introvert. I don't necessarily create.
You don't have an inner circle as such.
Not really, but I'm getting better at it, right? Mm-hmm. Now I'm like doing this interview. I'm trying to kind of be out there. Now I've met a few people that I look up to because they've been through that journey. Mm-hmm. And I'm starting to reach out to them for certain things that, that I come across, right? Yeah. And just learn from them. So I'm getting better at that. This is like, I'm in my 40s now. Yeah. So now I'm doing that, right? But I would highly recommend for entrepreneurs and founders at the early stage to do that, right? You create your network.
And it has gotten a lot easier. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Ping people on LinkedIn, or if you are able to, get connected somehow. Absolutely, people are willing to talk. In fact, I know that you also speak to so many, aspiring entrepreneurs, so many individuals. You are so liberal with your time, I have noticed. So I think the same applies to.
I like that. I mean, I think. It's hard, right? Like as you do more, once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. So you have one success, you want to do two, you want to do 5 things, right? Yeah. And everything is just pulling your time. Yeah. So it's natural to say, you know what, I'm just going to cut out all these other sort of random encounters that you would have, right? So I think I would have that a lot. Like I would lean towards that. I enjoyed those, and I learned a lot from those conversations and, people from the whole spectrum. Yeah. Right. But now I'm kind of getting better. Like consciously, I want to do that. Like make sure that I'm not like just so like time driven that it's like, hey, I don't have time to talk to you. To where like, I'm like not just doing that all the time and not doing what I'm supposed to do. So I'm trying to balance it. Yeah. Right. So consciously trying to balance both. And it's all, I'll take a few conversations that come to me just randomly, right? And then I'll also make sure that I'm managing my time pretty well, right? Yeah. I don't think I've figured it out completely, but it's still kind of...
Yeah. See, Nishant, from my perspective, I came from a very structured consulting world. And when I met you, I figured that, yes, we should allow for some bit of randomness in our lives. We should not be so structured that each day is sort of, planned out, each minute and, half an hour is blocked on your calendar. There should be definitely some room for randomness. Yeah. And, you often spoke of that balance. I think, figuring out that balance between that, being highly organized and allowing some bit of randomness, because that's how you sort of open yourself to life, serendipity and all of that, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you learn things that are like, help you in your day-to-day stuff. I mean, you can talk to the whole spectrum, right? You talk to individuals that are like, you might feel like there's no connection to that. Yeah. Or maybe they're like in a different world than you and where you are and where they are and all that. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you learn. Yeah. If you allow those dots to connect. Absolutely. So you got to create that dot, right? So how do you do that? Well, you got to have an open mind. You're talking to individuals, you're experiencing different things. And then let that just sit and let those dots connect, right? Yeah. I've had so many of these conversations that I've got some incredible ideas that if I didn't have that random conversation, I would have not known about that at all. That helps me in my sort of day-to-day world, right? Yeah.
Great. So, I know you have mentioned a few times that, in your dad's time, there was a certain way of doing business. Yeah. That you made some profit, you took the money home. And today, the way businesses are being conducted, businesses are being done, it's very, very different. So I want to know, what has, evolved over these, years, what the modern business is today and how is it going to be changing in the future?
Yeah, I think the thing that I realized way late, okay, was I grew up in a Gujarati family, Gujus, right? They're always, it's just business.
Yeah.
That's what you grew up around, right?
Yeah.
My dad, my family, they're all kind of doing some business, right? And my dad was into manufacturing, building, all sorts of stuff. And he had his kind of downturn and kind of lost most of it. But as I was growing up there, I always thought it's profit, the money coming in, money going out, profit and loss, right? And January 1st, whatever revenue you made the year before, January 1st is resets.
Reset. Yeah.
You got to start from zero, right?
Yeah.
So my services company was essentially that, right? It's like every year I got to get new projects coming in, right? To make that start at zero, January 1st, whatever I end up at December 31st, that's my revenue. But as I was doing that, I realized the retainers were really interesting because I could say, okay, well, I know I'm going to get this much money even on January 1st. Because if I signed up retainers on a monthly basis, I knew that revenue, if that customer doesn't churn, then January 1st, I already can start with, hey, I'm going to make X amount of money because these guys have signed retainer deals instead of just project-based, right? So even in a services company, I felt that the retainer dollar was much more valuable than the project dollar, right? But then, fast forward to like SaaS-based companies. So the SaaS revenues are worth a lot more than a services project-based revenue. Okay. And the analogy I would give is it's like, electricity. So as consumers, you pay for electricity. So for that electric company, they don't necessarily come to you every year and try to sell you on the value of electricity.
Yep.
Right. So once you become their customer, as long as you don't churn, as long as you don't say, hey, I don't like your service, I'm going to go somewhere else. It's up to the electric service company to keep you happy, and then that dollar keep coming in every consumption, just kind of keeps coming in. Yeah. So that electricity company, the dollars that are coming in, the customers that are coming in, that's a lot more value to that because you can keep that customer for not 1 year, but it could be like 3 years, 5 years, whatever, 10 years.
Literally.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's worth a lot more. So that's why if you look at the subscription economy, it's that. If you bring in $1 million worth of subscription dollars, and if you keep that churn, as in customers leaving you low, and make sure that retention of your customers is high, you could build an incredible business. And the value of that company is, like 10 times more than a services company that's just very project-based, or a manufacturing company that has to start with $0 in revenue in January 1st. Yeah. And this is it. This is as basic as this, right? This realization came to me way late in this journey. And now, in terms of the future, there's a reason everyone wants to be in a subscription-based economy. I mean, we are all not paying so much subscription every day, right? But in early 2000s, you weren't paying any subscriptions besides your electricity.
Exactly.
Right.
And even for software, you bought the license and you had it in perpetuity.
Yeah, it's perpetual licenses, and those companies had to come and sell you again on that software.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So all these companies now want subscription, dollars, and I think it's good for the consumers, right? Because they have to make sure, the companies have to make sure that you continue to like the service.
Absolutely, you're getting always the latest and the best.
Absolutely. So it's a win-win situation, I think. On both the sides. I think everything is just going to go towards subscription. We're already seeing that.
So let's talk about valuation. That is one topic that I keep hearing. I show up at a lot of startup meets. Sometimes I also show up as an investor on your behalf. So I keep hearing this whole conversation about unicorn. There is this term in India called soonicorn, soon to be a unicorn.
Okay.
Believe it or not, there is a term called soonicorn. Okay. So I don't think, at this point, anybody is talking about being a unicorn. I think everybody is talking about surviving. Mm-hmm. Everybody is trying to find that next round of funding that is, of course, going to help them sustain. So we have seen those crazy times. I'm not going to name the company. A certain company got listed at 40x. And today, I think people are talking about 5x, 10x. valuation. Nobody is talking about, being a $1 billion valuation company. Everybody is talking about how do we rein in, how do we figure out, next 24 months worth of runway.
Right.
So let's hear your thought on, what has been your sort of perspective and experience with investors.
Yeah, I think, again, with my history, right, like seeing, maybe if you call this a downturn, like a third downturn, right? We just went through a period of like good 12 plus years of just growth, which, I can't remember the last time us as humans went through a period like that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's natural for like markets, there's always bubble and then bust, bubble, bust. Like we haven't figured out how to like keep it normal and keep going up. Right.
Yeah.
And it hadn't happened for 12 years. So it's natural for, these valuations to just go off the roof. And then I think pandemic sort of created this other unique kind of situation where the governments had to print a lot of money in
all over the world.
All over the world, especially America, to just like keep the economy going. So all that money kind of funneled into the VCs, and there's also new tech innovations continuously happening, and there's this like feeding frenzy and just valuations going off the roof, right?
Yeah.
Some people benefited from it. I guess they took a lot of cash. The companies that didn't figure out how to manage their cash flow, they're in a very bad situation. The companies that figured out, okay, well, we can take this money and build really, sustainable revenue and then control our cost, they came out ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's kind of a combination of all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Me personally, just being around, my experience in 2000 and seeing the dot-com bust at the very early in my career, I always look out like, okay, well, if everything is like insane, you just feed it, right? You make $1 million in revenue, and like someone says, "Oh yeah, your company's worth $500 million."
Yeah.
You just right away feel like, really?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like what, like, it doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
So when a lot of those conversations happen everywhere, like, that this is like a crazy bubble.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you manage that? So there's all these signs that always happen. So, it's hard to predict the market, I would say, but, me personally, I know like when things kind of go crazy, I'm building a company that want to go long term.
Yeah.
So I'm always focused on sort of the cash flow, making sure that we can keep going for the next 2-3 years and keep building, good products and making sure that we're managing our costs as well. So, I think these are sort of normal cycles.
Yeah, but do you think, so I think from 2008 onwards, we saw this 0% interest rate regime for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an economist, but whatever my reading is, I can see that this is not going to happen ever again in the near foreseeable future, maybe, next 10, 20 years. And because this is not going to happen, we are not going to see those 40x kind of valuations anymore.
I wouldn't make that type of prediction because humans tend to forget what happened in the past, right? New generation come in, they look at history or not and learn from it. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
So it could potentially happen again. I think you could, at least we're not going to see it in the near future, something like this, especially given the inflation,
so
going up.
What your advice is going to be for future entrepreneurs? Should they be chasing valuation or should they be chasing something else?
I think you build a business, like believe in your product, believe in your solution that you're giving to the customer, the value that you're giving to the customer, and build a company that lasts a long time. Like focus on those things, right? The valuations and stuff like that are just kind of means to kind of get to that end goal.
Yeah.
Right. I think I blame the media a lot because everyone just like gets so like infatuated with like unicorns and oh my God, this person got 40x revenue, and this is going to be the next Google and stuff. It's like it's all speculation, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, I think, but I'm a believer of like when times get tough, I think the real companies sort of show up.
Yeah.
A lot of amazing companies that we see today, like Cloudflare, Datadog, MongoDB, they all started in like the 2008 downturn. So this is the time when there's a correction, is to really build or start a company. Right? Everything is kind of balanced. There's no craziness going on. Everyone's expectations are kind of balanced. If you have an idea, build a product, you get customers in this down sort of market, you have something.
So quickly getting into the part where we wanted to discuss India. So a lot of SaaS companies have come out of India, at least over the last 5-6 years. They are, proudly saying, build from India, build for the world. What's your take on that? Are we going to see this continuing? There is also this talk that this is India's decade, especially when it comes to, discovering or witnessing some of these globally successful software companies from India.
Yeah, absolutely believe in the India story. And I've seen this, since 2007, I've been coming here, I think taking like 70 trips or so.
Yeah.
I've seen that growth. I've gotten like snapshots, every 3 months snapshots. So I actually see change, right? If you're in the midst of everything, you might not feel the change as much. But I see the change, right? So what I see is there's some, like the Indian SaaS sort of ecosystem has done phenomenal. There's a lot of big successes. There's a lot of individuals that have all sorts of knowledge of building massive, successful companies, build in India, sell from India. All those things have happened. So in the market, there's a lot of individuals that know how to do that really well. Like, create a company here, sell in US, out of India, keep the cost, low. And I just don't see this stopping.
Yeah, I think the India story has, at least at this point, it is no longer about cost. It is finding those ready skill sets. I think India probably has the biggest talent pool for not just tech talent, but for pretty much everything. You talk about sales, you talk about marketing, you talk about finance. Probably one of the smartest people will find it here in India.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the cost element is still there, I would say, right? Because when the markets are crazy, like in the US, you're paying an engineer like $300,000, right? You can come here. This is what I'm talking about, kids that just come out of college. And maybe it's not the case now with this correction, but still it'll be like $200,000. You come to India, you can, start someone that's equally capable at like $30,000, $50,000, right? So the cost element is still there. Maybe not at the experience level. Right. But what I see is, first the enthusiasm, right? When I go to Bangalore and Hyderabad, I feel like the 2000s in San Francisco, right? So there's opportunities in India with a 1.4 billion population and everyone digitized. So there's so much opportunity here to start a company that kind of digitizes and helps India, right? The governments have made really good move with the UPI and open platforms and kind of encouraging the startup ecosystem and stuff like that. There's so much funding coming in as well, right? I think the Indian companies have to show, revenues. That's kind of the struggle, right? But there have been good successes there as well. It can't be about just like, build, grow at any cost and go public and cash out. And, it's just, that's not what it's about. You build like a long-term sustainable business. So the revenues is absolutely important, right? So I'm pretty confident like you'll get like amazing companies. You'll continue to get amazing companies out of India, right?
So we are going to get into the last segment now. We are going to talk about the future. One thing that we haven't touched upon is probably the biggest elephant in the room, and probably a lot of founders and thought leaders such as yourself have been thinking about, have been discussing, figuring out a way. How do you sort of navigate this big, once in a generation paradigm shift that is happening, which is artificial intelligence? So
you can look at it as like this crazy sort of tsunami coming at you, right? Like it's I wake up every day. I was like, how is this going to disrupt my business, right? And then the next thought is like, okay, how can I get the entire company up to speed with all the latest and the greatest coming out, and all the AI stuff that's coming out. Like, how do we like ramp up really fast, right? So then we can provide that value to our customers. So at one sort of thought is like existential crisis. Mm-hmm. Another is like, well, there's a lot of opportunity here, right? Same kind of going back to the thing that I talked about is like you have a problem. In our case with Contentstack, we are serving content, we're managing and serving content for all these brands around the world. And we have a solution for it today, that we built about 10 years ago prior to all the AI stuff. But let's learn about what AI can actually do, and it's changing every day, right? So just keep up to speed with it and still take that problem and then apply AI to it. And how can I solve that using AI, right? So that becomes an opportunity. So I feel like, this is massive. I actually feel it's bigger than the internet, bigger than the cloud, all those things. And it's coming at a very sort of fast pace. Like the internet came sort of in the late 80s, 90s. It took like 20 years for companies to kind of completely get ramped up on it. The cloud came in 2006, 2007. 2020, there's still a few companies that are like, oh, we don't want to move to the cloud. We just want to have our data center. So, like it kind of slowly trickled in everywhere, cloud. I think AI is going to be extremely fast. I see it right now. Again, my conversations on the whole spectrum, I just go ask someone you would think that would not ever touch ChatGPT. And you ask them and say, oh yeah, I use that for blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, really? Yeah. And so it's like pervasive. It's like it's spreading incredibly fast. And it's not just about ChatGPT. There's so much capabilities there. I was just kind of mentally doing an exercise, coming from the US to India, and all the individuals that I kind of interacted with on the services side, right? Even taking a car to the airport, the service agent, the gate agent. Like, are those jobs still relevant? And it's just a matter of time. Those things kind of go away. So it's AI and robotics. I think the combination of those two, we live in a world that is completely automated. So then the question is like, where are the jobs, right? So I think maybe the answer is like for the younger folks, right? How do you like stay relevant in this sort of world, this tsunami that's coming at us? The only thing I can think of is you lean in. Like you can't like just stay back and just kind of watch. Like you want to get on and learn about all those tools. Keep learning, keep growing. Get to the office. That's another thing. It's important because you can't sit at home and like have conversations with your colleagues. Again, it's a tsunami coming. Okay, we can see it. So what are you going to do about it? I want to ride on top of that tsunami instead of like get, drowned in that thing, right? So the only way you can do that is like you lean in, learn about all those capabilities, maybe be part of building those capabilities and providing those solutions to the customers, right? So I would say like for a lot of these younger folks, like get out there, like learn, get in the conversation. And
I think recently you got asked that some of the traditional software development jobs are going to go away. I think you had a perspective. Do you think that perspective still holds, that AI is not going to take away your jobs, but it is going to act as an enabler?
I think it's it's just everyone has this conversation like, is it 2 years, 5 years? I absolutely think that the software development job, the number of jobs that we have might not be there. If you look at a company, right, like in software development, out of 100 people, 80 people are kind of doing, tasks that could be automated. I would say more than 80%. like writing HTML, writing CSS, React.js code. All those things, if you're doing those things will be done a lot better by using these AI tools, right? So out of 100, 20 people are the sort of the thought guys, architecting something and creating a solution, thinking about the customer's problems and solving them. The 80% are basically just kind of QA and, writing those front end sort of logic that before you didn't have anyone that could do that. So, these kids would kind of learn that and get those jobs. And it was, the money was crazy in terms of funding and the crazy frenzies going on, and people are paying all sorts of money for this 80% of that, that workforce that is going to be completely automated. Right? Absolutely. Like that's a lot cheaper than having.
So you're saying the future is becoming 5x more productive than what you are today. So you're saying that we will see headcount reduction by at least 80% in the future.
I mean, I wouldn't put those numbers. I would just say that there's a potential. I mean, the businesses, don't kill yourself. Every business is looking at how am I going to leverage these AI tools to get more efficient. And by efficient, it's basically meaning cost control, right? Can I do more with less? That's always how you run a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And these AI tools are giving you, or you can see it, that it's going to do a lot of the stuff that you hire people to do, right? So it's a tsunami. It's a tsunami coming at you.
Yeah, but I have also seen commentators talk about, we have seen maybe 4 industrial revolutions. So back in the day when steam was harnessed to make steam engine, to make automatic manufacturing of clothing and all of that, and then there was this term in England called Luddites, right? They were saying that jobs are going to go away. Let's prevent this factory from being set up. And of course, at the dawn of maybe 20th century, invention of electricity, and then of course down to the 4th industrial revolution, when we have seen a lot of manual labor has been automated. But people are saying that even if AI has been around, humans, the creative humans, we have survived through so much. We will figure out a way. It is not going to be anarchy. It is not going to be a situation where there are so many people. People are talking about minimum basic income and all of that. In fact, some of the best commentators, people like Elon Musk, are also talking about we are heading towards a future where there will be, we'll have to give people minimum basic income so that they are not on the streets and there is no anarchy. So your thoughts?
It's interesting. I think the difference, I think the question you asked is maybe, okay, let's go start from scratch. Like you just ask the question.
Yeah, I'll ask the question again. Yeah. So you mentioned that there is going to be a bit of a crisis. Crisis in the form of several jobs that exist today that are going to go away. We just discussed, we'll see 5x productivity because of the use of AI. You mentioned that there is going to be a tsunami. So I often hear you use the term, either you ride the wave or you drown in it. Okay. So there will be a few people who will be left behind. There will be a few people who will not be employable with today's skills. And then there's this whole talk of universal basic income, which has recently gathered momentum. I did some research. I found out that this term has been around since the last 400 years at least. I'm presuming maybe it was around the time of the first industrial revolution. So this has recently gathered momentum. Time to time, commentators such as Elon Musk have spoken about universal basic income. There have been several other people who have spoken about it. So are we going to see that is going to be our future? Is that where we are doomed as humans?
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I can't say yes or no. But I think all those things are valid. Like at least the discussions are valid, right? The tsunami that I talk about is the incredible amount of tech that's coming out and the rate of change. So yeah, people talk about back in the days, industrial revolution, jobs are going to be gone, but there were more jobs and they were gone, things like that. I truly believe that's true as well. There'll probably be a lot more opportunities as well. But there's a shift that's happening, right? The shift, we can't just kind of push it to the side. And the shift is like the jobs and the roles and all those things are going to change, right? There might be more opportunities, but then that means that people have to be able to take those new opportunities, right? Or there might not be that many opportunities. I think that's what sort of the discussion that's going on, right?
Yeah.
The rate of change. What the scary bit for me is the industrial revolution probably took many years.
Yeah.
Even the internet, it took many years for people to really get on it. Cloud, kind of same things. The AI, it's coming at us at a blazing speed, right? It's getting better,
with every iteration.
X times better with every iteration, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing. Then humans need time to change, right? And so I think that's where a lot of folks might kind of be left behind. I think the universal income, the reason they keep bringing that up is well, everything is going to be done by AI and robotics and automations and things like that. So then what would humans do, right? And I think Elon and all those guys also talk about it's time of abundance. And I had to think about that. I was like, what does that mean? Well, if everything is taken care, there's robots running around that are with this AI kind of built into them, they're going to do all the work for us. And then the technology, the price of that technology is it's continually go down. So it's accessible by pretty much everyone. So it's basically automation, AI, robotics, kind of doing everything from farming to, autonomous cars to all those things. So then what do humans do, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where that universal high, what did you say?
Universal high income, universal basic income.
Yeah. And all those things come in conversations because then how do you sustain a society? I think the worry is because it's changing so fast, are we going to be able to, as humans, adopt to that fast, right? And there's that it's hard to change something real fast. But I'm optimistic because we just went through the pandemic.
Yeah.
The entire world, I can't, at least in my lifetime, I can't remember any event that the entire world felt it at the same time, right? And in this case, the pandemic, where everyone felt it the same, and then humans literally switched, right, really fast. So you have to be positive about that, right? So if AI is coming at us that fast, I'm hopeful that humans will figure out how to sort of, live with the world that's changing so rapidly, right? But there is going to be a massive change. There's definitely going to be pain. And the only way I know how to deal with this is just lean in, learn about all these new capabilities, try to, even me in my late 40s, I'm just all right, this stuff is new, it's tech, it's exciting. What is its capabilities? What new things that are coming up? What are the possibilities? Again, look at the problems that we have. And then there might be new problems. There will be new problems. Right? In our business, is Google.com going to be Google.com? Are you going to go to Google to search? I keep asking around to everyone, hey, are you going to ChatGPT to ask a question? How many times do you go there versus Google? And then the more and more I'm getting, I just go to ChatGPT to get the answer, right? Or any other AI tool like Bing.
Yeah.
So if that's changing, then the Google, which, you can... They run the internet because everyone goes to Google and that SERP, the search engine page, result page, drives all the ads. That's how brands get in front of their prospects and customers. It changes the web, changes that whole thing. If people are not going to Google search and going to these AI tools to ask questions and get answers directly, it literally just disrupts everything. Right. So then us as a business, we're in the content space. We manage content, deliver that content. So my question is, where should we be delivering that content? Right. And then content generation in itself has changed. Humans write a lot of content. Well, now these AI tools are writing content. Now, are people going to get sanitized by all the AI content? Because it's pretty easy to figure out this is written by an AI. So would human maybe value human written content? So all those questions are out there. There's no answers for it. The only way I can figure out is like learn about all the AI capabilities and just keep being curious and use those new capabilities in solving the problems that exist, right?
Yeah, when I hear about this whole conversation about universal basic income, let's say there was universal basic income and it is subscribing to a certain system, like what is often called as communism. Communism is the most equal form of governance system in the world. You are giving equal income or income based on somebody's ability. Okay, but let's say everybody was their income was guaranteed on a regular basis. So where is that human endeavor? Where is that human struggle? Where is that human pursuit? So eventually I feel, it's my perspective, that it will self-correct. And then of course, those who want to work hard, those who want to be enterprising, they will figure a way out, And I think the society is going to normalize, much like we have come out of all sorts of disruptions, industrial revolution and, change the way we have been doing things. We have had wars, we have had the pandemic, and the collective group of human endeavor is heading in a better direction overall. That's what I said.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of did that experiment already during pandemic, right? The U.S. government printed a lot of cash and gave it out to people.
Yes.
Right? So we already had that, and while they were doing that, there were a lot of people creating and building new things, and then there's a bunch of people that just took that money and didn't do anything. So, we'll find some new balance.
Some new balance, absolutely, yeah.
But that change and then the struggle that humans have to go through to kind of get through that change, I think that's, there's no way around that.
Absolutely. And I must ask you this question. You have often mentioned, go where the struggle is. And, I know what you mean by that. And I think for our audience, we must hear you. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I look back at my life and, all those sayings that you see, like struggle is good and it builds character and all that. Like, everyone, every human.
You truly believe in it?
I absolutely believe in it. Like if you, try to not give struggle to something, then that, you don't create anything basically.
Exactly.
Right. So to like comfort zone, get out of your comfort zone. I mean, it's a struggle, right? It's things that you have to kind of break these shackles that you have in your mind.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle that you have to go through. You don't have money. That's a struggle. And you got to think creative and work hard and, all those things. But once you get on the other side of that struggle, you're much better because you get a very different perspective. You get like this sense of accomplishment. And then, you feel like you've achieved something, right?
Exactly.
And build character. So go where the struggle is. I think that's where the knowledge is as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And the satisfaction, I feel like, is there. Because once you get around that struggle, that's where you get the satisfaction.
Absolutely, yeah. Last question, Nishant. I think this is a hypothetical question. This gets talked about. In fact, I have heard you say a few times as well. So if, you were to do it all over again, if you were, say, 22, you were to, what would be your approach with all the knowledge that you have gained over these years? And maybe again, a question or maybe an advice that you would give to the current 22-year-olds. What would that be?
Let's talk about the advice. I think it's just like keep going. Like you're not gonna figure everything out day one, right? Just like if you want to do something, do it. I always look at and I somehow very early on I knew this about myself is am I gonna regret it later if I don't do this? Right? I wanted to always start a business, and maybe that's because I grew up in a Gujarati family, and I thought that my dad's in the business. He's a cool guy. I should be like him, and I want to start a business. So I always felt like I wanted to be, running a business, right? And then so I was like, oh, am I going to regret this at some point that I didn't at least give it a try?
Yeah.
So just, if you feel like you want to do it, just do it, you know. And you're not going to have all the answers. I hear all these like, things where like, oh, you got to learn this, you got to learn that, it's like all this stuff.
You'll
It's
never
like,
be
no,
ready.
like take a step, man. Like start something,
Absolutely.
and let it come. And of course, what I would say is what I would have done differently is just first just kind of go out there, and I would have talked to more people, right? And I would have gotten that, learn from them, so I could have avoided a few of those hard like mistakes that I've done. Maybe not avoided, but like instead of 100, I would have reduced it down to 20, maybe, right? If I had talked to a few people, and then reading a lot of like books that's already out there. I used to read a lot, but it was all more like on the tech side, right? More just here and there, kind of would read a lot of the tech stuff. But I would read. I would say like go out there. There's some amazing knowledge and books and stuff like that that are out there that you pick up on, and you might not understand it completely. A few of those books, like as you go through, as you're experiencing, you might like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I recognize that. Then you read it again, and you get like a very different understanding and perspective, right? So there's a bunch of these books. I mean, one that right now, the one that comes to my mind is this high growth handbook. Yeah. Elad Gil, yeah, that's right. So it's a pretty thick one. It's not, you don't have to read it from end to end. You can pick up any chapter and kind of read that through. I've always found, I don't read it all the time, but it's like every now and then I'll like pick up a chapter.
To it, yeah.
And I get a lot of insights, and as we're scaling our company and all these things that we come across, Elad's like listed those things, and it's kind of normalized it. It's like, okay, well, I'm not unique.
Yeah.
A lot of these founders go through the same stuff, right? Yeah. So that's a great book. Of course, Innovator's Dilemma, that comes up quite a bit. And I have to say, I hadn't heard about it. Everyone talks about it. And I recently just started listening to it. I was like, holy shit, okay, I see this happening, as we're scaling our company. So how do we get around that? So, just listening through that is helping me think through how I am, going to steer this company.
But before these books happened to you, there was another book that I keep hearing from you. Growth Mindset.
Oh, the growth mindset is also very interesting, but I picked that up like a few years ago. It wasn't in my early career. So I think that's like, to your question, like what would you do differently? I would just like
refer to these
books. And I probably would not have understood it at that time. Guarantee you. It would have just went above my head. Because I did not experience these things. So it's one of those things, you can't really shortcut through this.
So there is this wonderful saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will come. So the books arrived to you, the books sort of found their way to you when you were ready. Right.
And in my journey, I can look back and say, if I would have done these things, it would have helped me, right? That's absolutely true. But at the same time, I would not give up the experience that I got going through those years.
Sure.
Coming to India 70 times and learning about my own culture. Like, regardless of any successes, I would have felt that would not have been a regretful journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it would have been an amazing experience as is.
Nishant, I want you to quickly talk about what you have often mentioned, that you are a child of two countries. The country of your birth and the country of your naturalization, maybe.
Right.
So just want to hear about it.
Yeah, it's two amazing countries, right? You have India, the largest democracy in the world, and then you have America, it's the oldest democracy in the world. Very similar sort of ideology, although very different, right? So I was born here. I was born in India, and I absolutely lost it. So I picked up whatever culture I could, and I was in a boarding school out of those 14 years, like half of those years. So I went to America, and then I embraced that culture, right? So I'm an American and I'm an Indian, both at the same time. And I mean, one of the luckiest person to be, because both those economies kind of very similar ideologically, like, democratic capitalism kind of going forward. This is a developing nation. There's so much growth that could happen here. This is a developed nation, and I can relate with both. I mean, the fact that I've come back to India for 17 years, every time I come back, I feel like I almost like get another layer of like understanding of India, because it's so diverse and so deep, and thousands of years of history, and you just can't know everything. So every time I come back, I learn more about India, right? And of course, America, I just live there most of my time, and it's like an amazing place to be with the way that country goes forward, right? It's like all the immigrants can come in and kind of be the best of
best versions of themselves.
Yeah, and you have the opportunities that you have, and it's a developed nation, but still, people just like constantly, just individualistic, and they just want to constantly like move, like do it better. Like the next day should be better than the day before, right? That's kind of the mentality there. I think I see the same here now, right? And finally, like India is seeing this like tremendous opportunity. It takes so many years for India to come out of that, right? And it started, I guess, in the early 90s, but it's been 30 plus years for India to finally feel like, okay, now we can be a developed nation,
and we belong.
And we belong. So like I'm seeing these both at the same time. It's like on two different spectrums. It's like an amazing.
I love this perspective. I love the way you put it. So great conversation, Nishant. There's so much to learn from you, and I think we'll save it for another day. Thank you so much for taking our time. And next time when we do this again, this seat then belongs to you, and on this seat we will have somebody talk about their story, a story that needs to be told. So your story with Nishant. Thank you, everyone. I'm excited about this. I'm excited about what we have started from this place in Virar. This place has a vibe of its own. We have started multiple companies, and this probably is something that will find wings at a later point. So until next time, thank you so much for hearing. Thank you so much for listening in. Ladies and gentlemen, we had Nishant Patel talking us through some of his experiences. I hope it was useful. Until next time, see you later.